Conway, and she's actually into carnivore and keto and all the things that we talk about. Go check her out over on Instagram, carnivore.keto.fitness. Literally, you got all the buzzwords in there, Dani. Good job. Carnivore, keto, and fitness.
Thank you. All of my passions for many years, so it fits, luckily.
Since 2006, you've been carnivore, ketovore, burning fat, helping people with body recomposition, blah, 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 get rid of the bloat. But you're here today for a whole nother reason, because I find your story about your breast implants fascinating. And she's showing you guys on camera now the breast implants. And so it's funny because I had this interview set up with you, and I saw another person into carnivore and biohacking. Biohacking Bombshell just did a huge post on her Instagram page showing the mold developing.
Oh yeah, I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen it yet.
Yo, you got to check that one out. It's so good. And so it was kind of fascinating that I was going to be interviewing you here today. And then here she is talking about her experience with it. Welcome, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit of your story into health, and then we'll get into the breast implants.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I've been in the low carb space since 2006. Prior to that, I spent years on yo-yo dieting, counting calories, counting points, restricting calories, especially fat-free, tons of fat-free diets as well, and really just got nowhere, yo-yoed up and down. Maybe I'd lose a little weight, but I'd gain it back. And so then, around 2006, I was in my 20s and I was fed up, literally. But I also, had complained to the doctor and did blood work, and everything came back normal. And I still felt like crap, honestly. Tons of hormone issues, tons of digestive issues, aside from the weight stuff. And I just wasn't willing, like in my mind, I was in my early 20s and couldn't even imagine how I was going to be able to continue like that and get to, 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
So that just set me on a path looking for a different way. And, if we think eating fat and excess protein and high protein is taboo now, it's like 15 years ago. And you well know it was very, very taboo back then. So I just kind of dove in head first, and the waters were really muddy, figuring things out on my own.
Well, I give people context here, Dani, because 2006, yes, I was around. That was where I started my podcast, Living La Vida Low Carb Show, was 2006. That's been a long time ago. But there was no social media.
Right.
There was no iPhone. There was no easy podcast to listen to hear about this. I mean, I started mine late 2006 was when I started Living La Vida Low Carb Show, but you had to log on to a computer. Then you had to go to iTunes. Then you had to type in keywords, and then maybe you'd find a podcast related to those keywords. So yeah, it was difficult back then.
Yeah, so I, started with low carb, and I tried to figure out counting carbs and the Atkins way of doing things, and it just sort of, started to open up some new doors, and I started to feel better as time went on and as I started to eat that way. So I was eating, keto, what we know as keto now, but I didn't really know at that point that there was a name for it, so to speak. And I started to, I struggled with excessive cravings and excessive hunger. That was probably some of my biggest symptoms that I had. And that was the stuff that started to kind of rebalance the quickest, because eating more fat, eating more protein. And then from there, it just kind of continued. And I was, I wasn't a quick weight loss success either. It was, over a year until I was able to lose a majority of my weight, which is about 65 pounds. And then from there, continued to then, improve my body composition as well.
Yeah. Well, in the midst of improving your body composition, you're starting to see all the everything start to pop that you want to see pop, and you want to see things go away that went away.
Right.
And I'm sure you looked down and you kind of went, damn, I want those to be perky now. I want, isn't that literally what you told me? That
yeah, that's exactly and the weight and the health part of it, I'm grateful for, the journey and the weight loss and all of that. And then, like you say, it was kind of oh, well, this would be kind of fun. I'm going to be turning 40 in a few years. Maybe I'll do it for my 40th birthday. And, you know, my husband and I laughed, bless his heart, he's the best. But he said, why would we wait until you're 40?
Yeah.
Why do we just not do it now? I think I was 36 at the time. And so that sort of led into the, you know, the implant story.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I don't fault any woman who wants to make that part of their body look more enhanced. Like, you're going to get the guys happy because we like that kind of thing. We're built that way with our brains. And so there's nothing shameful about that. You know, and from a woman's perspective, it makes you more female, feminine feeling. And so, yeah, I mean, at face value, it doesn't seem like a bad thing.
Right.
And I'm sure that was the rationale you had in your head. What could go wrong? What's wrong with this? Now, had you done any kind of research into people that had problems before and you just kind of said, well, that's just rare, I won't get that? Or did you know?
So I did not, what I feel like is I didn't do the research that I should have done. So I feel like, you know, if someone comes to me now and says, should I get implants? I never tell people what to do. I would share my experience, and I would just say, just please do the research you don't want to do, because that's where the gap was for me. So I had a lot of friends, especially in the fitness industry, and who were very happy with their implants and had no problems that you could see from the outside, or that I knew that they were complaining about that were implant, you know, as a result of the implants. And I sort of knew about it in the back of my mind as far as like breast implants could cause problems. But like you say, like I was like, probably this would never happen to me. There's so many, you know, there's so little that you do hear about it. And I was just more concerned about the vanity part of it.
Yeah. And again, nobody faults anybody for that reason, especially after you had a weight loss success. Here you are building this keto carnivore fitness kind of consulting that you're doing with clients, and the things that you're doing, trying to help people. You want to look good, because if you look good, you play the part, that gets more clients. Clients are like, whoa, I love the transformation I've seen in her. Let's do what she's doing. So, I mean, there's every good reason why you would want to do it. So what made you take the ultimate plunge?
It was all the good reasons, none of the bad reasons. And, you know, I had at that point finally maintained my weight loss and my body recomposition as to, you know, where I was at that then for a long time, quite a few years, which I was never able to do prior to going down the low carb road and keto, and then into carnivore. And so that was kind of like my thing. Like I found the thing that worked for me, and I had, you know, I would never go back to anything the way it was before. And so that was kind of like me, like I've maintained it for quite a few years. I've proved to myself that this is how I want to live and continue living. And obviously I was practicing what I preach and preaching what I practice.
Yeah.
You know, I went and started my practice in 2007. So that was all part of, you know, that decision at that point.
So Dani, it seems you had a lot of the positive things that you had in your mind, which convinced you to do it. What were some of those bad things? You mentioned you kind of ignored the bad things. What were the things that you heard that kind of gave you slight pause, but then you ultimately overlooked them?
So just the basic sort of breast implant illness. I knew it existed. I had heard of it. I didn't really know what at that point, you know, if we got into the brass tacks of it, what it really meant, in all honesty. I just knew that they caused problems for some people. And that was about it. Like I said, I didn't do the research that I hope everyone does, whatever they decide to do, you know, moving forward, if someone's going to consider it.
Yeah. And I mean, look, they pitch it as, oh, it's a saline implant. So the worst thing that happens is if it bursts, you just got a lot of salt in your body. What?
I said, ding, ding, ding. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is so, like, that just goes straight into me. And the reason I say that is because it wasn't even until recently, like I had to research, okay, saline is, like you said, for the most part, it's safe. It's not silicone. It's not as toxic, right? In comparison to silicone.
Right.
But it's the actual shells that are the same. So the shell part is where all of the materials are that you could run a truck over it and it's not going to explode. that leach into the body that become toxic. And was like, for me, like, oh, they're saline, it's probably not going to be an issue. And it wasn't, you know, like I said, until recently, and I hate to even admit that, but until I realized, like, just because it's saline on the inside, which is less toxic than silicone if you're comparing the two, that it's the shell that still leaches, aside from the fact that you have a foreign object in your body.
Yes, and we're definitely going to get into that here in a minute, because I want to hear what that was like when you developed problems and then your ultimate decision to have them removed. But it's just like water bottles. Like, people are like, what's wrong with the water bottle? What you don't realize, the water is probably fine. It's not the greatest in the world generally, unless it's spring water. But even then, it's what it's in. It's in a plastic bottle. And I'll tell you, I've had plastic bottles in my car. You let them heat up just a little bit and you taste that plastic in the water. So I'll take a sip and I go, oh crap, ruined another one. So, but it's one of those things that you have to experience it to believe it. And you don't believe it until you experience it. And so same with this. So you got saline, or did you get the other one?
These are saline, correct. You're right, saline, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, the other one just sounds horrendous. Anybody that's trying to that's like a toxic substance. Like, anything goes wrong with that, you in trouble. Like, that's really, so those, I think, kind of fell out of favor even 25, 30 years ago. They weren't real popular when people started showing black and things happening, and then women losing their breasts completely. And yeah, it was bad. But saline was kind of the new kid on the block. Got your attention, huh?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about what you just mentioned with the silicone is that when I was consulting with the doctors before, you know, for when I was deciding to get them, they would show me like all of the science behind that, like, silicone is now safer than it ever was before.
They do that. Look, it's their industry. They're going to save face any way they can.
Yeah, we both know that one.
So saline, you chose it. When did this happen?
2012.
Okay, so about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So you had it done. Did you like them when they turned out? Did they turn out the way you wanted them to?
That's a good question. They actually, yes and no. So yes, obviously I wanted bigger boobs. No, because I was going for a different look than what I actually got. I had some excess skin and some, you know, things that happen because you lose weight.
Yes.
And so what I was going for wasn't exactly what I ended up with, because I was going for smaller and perky, if we're just going to get real here. Going for smaller and perky, but I ended up with a little bit larger than I had intended. But at that point, it wasn't something that I was going to get fixed again. It just was what it was.
Keto can be hard. Tabulating, measuring, baking, taking 3 months to perfect one recipe, and to mixed reviews.
Did something die in here? Oh, I think it moved.
And by that point, you give up your diet, find a dark corner, and stuff yourself with sugar, carbs, and regret.
This, isn't what it looks like.
Well, this is where Keto Chow saves the day. The easiest, tastiest, ketoist meal replacement on the market.
It's like ice cream melted in my mouth.
Yes, but melted ice cream with all the protein, nutrients, vitamins, and electrolytes your body needs.
Oh, that's cool.
And with 3 starter kits, each with restaurant tips, keto food guides, and a ton of flavors to try, your taste buds and your waistline will thank you.
Thank you.
So grab your starter kit today at jimmylovesketochow.com.
It's so easy.
Keto Chow. Make keto easy.
So educate me, because I know nothing about breast implants.
Sure.
Do they not do any kind of like tuck and like try to, if there is loose skin, to kind of straighten it out? Do they do that kind of thing in the midst of this?
They definitely do. The doctors that I had consulted with at the time didn't offer that as something that I would actually need.
Okay.
So, and funny that you asked that, because my current doctor that did the explant surgery, when he said to me, I understand that you want to remove them, I just need to give you all of your options. One of the options was, in fact, a lift, so to tighten up and lessen the amount of skin with a smaller implant.
Yeah.
And had somebody given me that option 8, 9 years ago, I might have taken it. Now that's despite not talking about anything about the problems at that
Right.
point, but just as far as the size, the size goes and what I ended up with. But of course, this time I just opted to, to not have them replaced.
Matter because you got bigger ones than you wanted. Does that present the opportunity for more problems because there's more surface area for problems to develop than the smaller ones, or are they all just problems?
Yeah, I actually don't know that theory makes sense. I don't know the answer to that, but the larger the implant, the larger object the body has to quote unquote deal with, the more scar tissue it's going to create. And yes, the more chance for toxins in that area. Absolutely. I would say that you're probably 100% right there.
So you got the surgery. How long is the recovery?
Mm-hmm. So typically 2 to 3 weeks about, 8 weeks until you can really lift weights again.
Right.
But for the most part, a lot of people are well recovered back into their life within a few weeks.
That's really quick. That's really quick. So I have to ask, how did your husband, were you married at the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he loved him. I mean, yes, we've been married since 2007. And he has supported me every step along the way with the implants and then with the extra, because he saw all the trouble that I went through.
I speak for every guy in the world. We like them. That's just the way we're wired. So.
Yeah.
So good. So things were going along swimmingly. Let me start with, did you get the results you wanted besides them not being smaller and perkier like you wanted? Other than that, I guess you were like, okay, well, they're different. They're there. They're not what they were. Did you have a good experience kind of in the short term after it? Oh, I lost you. You got a text message or something and it made you quiet. Oh, you're quiet. Yeah, if you got a text message or a call, it's going to make you quiet. I think I hear you. All right, you're back.
Oh, that was the weirdest thing. I didn't touch the phone. You can hear me?
You get a text message or a phone call, it will silence you.
Okay.
So we're back. I'll splice out of the final edit. So did you like the results was the question.
Yeah, I like the results. And I will say that I started having symptoms 3 weeks after the surgery. So I was battling with what I started to experience and going back to the doctor and having the doctor say that it's definitely not the implants. There's no way it could be the implants. I blamed the anesthesia. And so it was very soon after I got them that I started with being symptomatic.
Wow. So that's quick. I would think, okay, maybe they're in there a little while. Maybe they start to develop mold or other kind of things. And then that's when you had symptoms. So you got it right away. It was almost like your body was like, sister child, what the hell are you doing to us?
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I just, I blamed it on the anesthesia, like I just said. Part of my story that not very many people know, I think I shared with you early on when we started chatting, was that I actually had a breast reduction back in 2001, prior to starting to lose my initial weight, because that was sort of like a catalyst for me to be able to be active. And I have no regrets about that whatsoever. But I did have a reaction to the anesthesia back in 2001. And so given my experience, knock on wood, these are the surgeries that the only surgeries I've had. Of course, I went back to, it must be the anesthesia. It's only 3 weeks. It can't be the implants. They haven't been in me that long.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what did you do after that? Once you started what were the symptoms, by the way? What were you doing?
The initial symptoms that started were a return of a lot of my digestive symptoms that I had gotten rid of at least 6 years, 5 to 6 years prior. So
was it an ingredient on the I guess the outside part of the breast implant that was reacting in your body? What did they put? It's plastic, obviously, but what other kind of things did they put in there?
So there's all kinds of heavy metals and toxins that they basically use to make this shell.
Whoa. Like
Now,
what? Like cadmium? What do they put in there?
so I mean, things that I can't pronounce,
Right.
honestly. But that's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, when you think about what needs to keep this together and keep
Yes.
it, some people have these in their body for 20 years. It's just not good stuff. But I think I was reacting to just the foreign body being in my body at that point, because I don't know that in 3 weeks it would be that much of all of a sudden, like this huge toxin exposure, so to speak.
Yeah, that seemed a little odd. And like I was telling you, this biohacking bombshell, she had mold growing on hers. And mold, that's bad news. It gets in the body. We all know what's happening with that. But that wasn't your issue at all.
No, I didn't have mold, and honestly, when they took the implants out and removed all the scar tissue, it was one of the pictures I posted in yesterday's post. They said my implants were pristine, so it's like, okay, well, thank you, but you know, thank you for taking them out. But yeah, so I was very lucky that I didn't have mold, and I honestly, before I went into surgery, I forgot to ask the doctor to send my scar tissue that they removed off to a lab they can analyze that and check what is actually in it. And, you know, at that point, it was what it was. I couldn't really go back and have him do that. So I knew that I would be going down the path of starting to do some more detoxing and things like that. So I don't know that having those results would have changed anything, other than I might have known that there was some toxins present that I pretty much thought were present anyways. So
yeah, and it sounds horrible. Like, here you are, you've invested. By the way, how much does something like this cost?
the explant,
No, the getting them in.
oh, getting him in, I think was around $7,000.
$7,000.
But it depends on where you are too. Like, I'm in Northern California, and it's expensive other places, like way more other places.
Yeah, probably 5 to 15 grand is
Yes.
the range. So $7,000, and you were really expectant. You were really hopeful. They weren't quite what you wanted. You wanted them smaller or perkier, not the bigger that they were. And then 3 weeks later, here you are having these issues. When did you finally make the connection that it was the actual implants and not anesthesia reaction?
So over the years, I'll try to fast forward a bit. So over the years, I spent, you know, thousands of dollars on acupuncture. I have an amazing acupuncturist, and I only got, like, with all the things that I did, like, I went back to doing functional testing that I use with my clients, and balancing hormones, and looking at root cause of digestive issues. And like I said, thousands of dollars of acupuncture. And kind of fast forward a little bit, I got some relief to the symptoms, but I never really felt 100% better. And that being said, probably around 2018, I got some blood work. I started to see my thyroid antibodies going up.
Yeah.
And so that's
I'm just real curious. You let this go on 6 years.
Yeah.
After the initial. So you were so convinced it was the anesthesia that all these things that were now happening to you years later, you're still not putting the connection together. That to me is fascinating, especially since you're into kind of a functional health type of deal, doing all these tests. Like, did it ever come on the radar screen in that little period of time before you ultimately did you kind of in the back of your mind go, I wonder if it's more than the anesthesia? That's been so long ago, it couldn't still be impacting me.
Yes, and yes. And so this is the part of the journey that, like, gets, and, you know, I've shared before, like, it gets a little bit shameful, because I was trying to help, you know, women, and I do work with men too, like, heal from the root cause of whatever their issues are, and really try to rebalance their bodies from the inside out. And here I was dealing with a lot of these symptoms that I couldn't get to the bottom of. So it was kind of like, you know, a little bit, like I said, shameful in a sense that I was going through this, and yet I was also then helping people get through whatever things that they're going through at the same time.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. I could definitely see that being frustrating for you, because there's nothing worse than being someone in the health space and you're dealing with health stuff.
Yeah.
And trust me, I understand. So, but you just, wow. That is just a fascinating story to me, Dani, that you did allow it to go on for so long. When did it become obvious that it had to be the breast implants?
So I think around 2018, when my thyroid antibodies first started, I got the first test back that they were higher than normal, basically.
Yes.
And I had been gluten-free at that point since 2008. I've been eating clean, keto, carnivore, ketovore, very meat-based, all of the above since 2006.
Right.
Lifestyle-wise, you know, exercise, like doing literally all the right things. And so it was just, like I said, that thyroid antibody marker, and now learning a little bit more throughout those years that breast implant illness, breast implant toxicity is a thing that can start to cause autoimmune dysfunction, and things that people would never contributed to those imbalances could be like rooted with breast implant problems.
Did you actually develop Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune disease, as if you don't know, of the thyroid, when your antibodies go up? How high did they go?
At this point, they were in the 50s.
Okay.
Which is a little high. It's not astronomical. So then in 2018, I had somebody else that I knew that had implants removed, and she had significant benefits, like very soon after she had the implants done.
Like what?
Taken out. Like she had yellowing in her eyes, bags under her eyes, like a lot more physical symptoms than like visible symptoms than I ever had. Her skin tone and all of those improved like within days.
Yes.
Now, so 2019, 2020 happens. I develop anxiety, so significant anxiety that I had never had issues with before. Some hormonal problems that I blamed on my age, because at this point I was, 42-ish, 43. I'm 44 now, but I thought this was just part of being 40, despite my work with female hormones. And it was definitely early for a lot of those kinds of perimenopausal symptoms to start happening. And then at the end of 2020 is happening. And then sometime that summer of 2020, I had my thyroid antibodies retested and they were over 200.
Woo!
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and @RealGoodFoods on social media.
Going in the wrong direction.
Still eating clean, ketovore, carnivore, grass-fed, clean.
Although I will say stress will contribute to that if it's left chronic and you keep stress. So that can play a role. But you knew, you were stressed. We all were last year, by the way, in addition to all the normal stresses in our lives. But you had a lot of sneaky suspicions in the back of your mind that it was the breast implant.
Yeah, and I think it's important for me to say, like, despite the pandemic and everything that happened in 2020, not a lot changed for me, because I had already been working from home for 14 years. So I didn't have a job that I suddenly was working from home. I didn't have any, not a lot aside from lockdown and things of that nature that were going on in our area. I didn't have a lot of change. I'm very lucky and grateful. We didn't have a lot of life changes at that point that I felt could have all of a sudden contributed to these antibody marker going up. And yet I still had developed like this anxiety. And so some of these other symptoms, it just wasn't adding up. Yes, stress can cause a lot of this stuff, but it didn't add up.
So Dr. Google became your friend?
Yes, and I actually had another dear friend who had I want to say similar story, but she had some issues. She had been to like 8 doctors for, and nobody could figure out the answer. And so she decided to get her implants removed. She'd only had them for about 4 years at that point. And many of her symptoms abated very, very, pretty quickly. And so after she's a local friend of mine, after she did that, it was like there was no questions answered.
Yeah.
No questions asked at that point. I had already mentioned to my husband on and off over the previous year that maybe I should get him out, because I also started to learn that doctors would say that in order to keep them healthy, you have to replace them every 10 years.
Ooh.
And
Did you know that at the beginning?
No. And I mean, I'm not one that like wants to have surgery, knock on wood, every 10 years.
Think about it. Most of the women that get these, they're usually in their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of seen the highlight of the 20s and they have babies, and then they start having things sag or whatever in their 30s, and that's when they have it. So you get this at, say, even early 30s, 33, 43, 53. Like at that point, it's like, all right, I got the purpose of them out of the way on. You probably just be like, get these out of me. If you're going to get in there and do something with them, just get them out.
I mean, there are people that do get them replaced and fixed and all of that. But at that point, like I said, it wasn't really an option for me to do that.
Yeah. Well, Temple said, and I think this is probably true with a lot of people that deal with health, that they're health coaches like Temple. So glad you're talking about this. I've seen 2 of my clients who had a reaction to them as well. It's so wild. Women really need to be warned, or at least be informed. Like you said at the beginning, you're not trying to discourage women, but at least do your research and see if it's right for you.
Exactly.
So, okay. So middle of last year, you're like, all right, it's got to be the implants. What was next?
So that was about summertime. And then, let's see, at that point, August, September, October, I think it was around the end of the summer that I then scheduled the consultation with the doctor that I decided to go with. He was also the doctor that a friend of mine went to. And I didn't feel, after I went to see him, well, it was at least 8-week waiting period to get into his office. So at that point, it was like I was already having dreams that I was waking up and the implants were out of my body. Or like, I remember having one dream where my body was like pushing the implants, trying to push the implants out of my body.
Wow.
So that's when I just basically knew like this was something that like had to happen. So it was still wait time till I could get in there and consult with him, which I did. And he, had a great bedside manner, and I was very confident in his ability. I didn't feel like I needed to go consult with 5 different doctors the way I did, to have the implants. And I scheduled it, and it was still probably like 6 months-ish waiting time, maybe 5 months from there. And then I had the surgery on March 11th of this year. So it's been just 7 months this month.
Wow. So this is very, very recent that you had them removed. So how did you feel, other than, this is very multi-layered, so work with me. Sure. Brain's going a million miles an hour at all the kind of questions. Was the initial thought after the surgery, the removal surgery, was it relief, or was it looking down and going, damn?
Thank God.
Okay.
Am I allowed to use cuss words?
You can cuss all you want, sweetie.
Thank fucking God these things are out of me.
Well, and look, you're 44 now, 43, 44. Like, you're at the age where it would not be so devastating. I mean, obviously, no woman wants to lose their breasts and
right.
have all that. But I think about the women that get breast cancer and then they take the breasts out, and it's like we applaud that and we celebrate. And we should be doing the same with people that get breast implants taken out that have had adverse reactions. You should be applauded. You're no less a woman. You're very attractive still. I get it that you want that to kind of be a part of your womanhood, but there's more to a woman than those 2 things.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It was just, thank God they're gone. I looked in the mirror. I mean, it was weird. definitely weird.
Yeah.
It was just so much relief, and I didn't, it was a couple days till the bandages came off and all of that, but it was in yesterday's post, one of the photos of myself that I posted was the first picture I took post surgery. And I forgot to put that in the post, but I just remember just looking in the mirror, taking a picture, and again, I was so relieved. I didn't recognize myself in a sense. I didn't care that I looked flatter than I did the day before. Like, there was just a lot of things that went through my mind.
Better question. How did your husband respond? Because he saw you suffering and you were trying to be the detective that you are, figuring it out. And after all these years, since 2012, trying to figure it out and finally getting it done this year, what was his reaction after they were taken out?
He's so great. He just wanted me to be happy and healthy. Yeah. I mean, he's heard me complain, like stomach aches after dinner every single night after I eat. I mean, nausea after I eat all the time. Like, the digestive issues were probably the worst thing that I would complain about overall. And just, being uncomfortable. And I ride horses, and I started to notice that when I would ride, I really wouldn't notice being excessively out of breath or anything like that. I mean, I'm very fit. But when I would be leaving the barn, I noticed I just had trouble breathing.
Yeah.
And nothing that would be alarming that I would go to a doctor for, but just something that started to make me think, God, I wonder if the implants are like pressing on my lung, just like causing this problem, so to speak. So that was just another thing. So to answer your question, I mean, he was just so supportive of me just feeling better, regardless of what that looked like, no pun intended, but literally regardless of what that looked like.
Never let that man go. Sounds like a winner. So
he is.
Carnivore Crone says that she's 2 months explant, so she's just started. What advice would you give for her?
It really depends on the person. So first of all, congratulations. You made a great decision. And just, eat clean, drink lots of water, get some, detox, think about detoxing your body with various, infrared sauna, things to clean up toxins, that kind of thing.
Activated charcoal or other kind of binders? Is that
exactly. Binders. Activated charcoal is great. Diatomaceous earth, as long as it's food grade, is wonderful. Mediclay, that combination can really kind of sop things up. I'm laughing that my mom is actually watching. She said the husband's a keeper for sure. But just, to sop things up and things like that. And yes, some people do need to address underlying pathogens and things that might have, gotten in, so to speak, to weaken their symptoms and that kind of thing.
Yes. Tamara says health is more important than implanting yourself. I love you, Dani. So thank you, Tamara, for that.
Tamara.
That's an M-Joy coach's mom. Husband. Yes. The commander says NAC can help with that COPD and just wind. Interesting. I guess he was referring to you being on your horseback and having the difficulty, but you don't have that trouble anymore. You're 7 months out. Have you been back on? Have you noticed the differences? What are some of the differences you've noticed?
So like I said, the stomach aches that I would get every night after dinner, they're completely gone. And any type of bloating, I feel like I've even forgotten about some of the digestive stuff that I was experiencing, which is crazy because it consumed me for so much.
Yes.
Anxiety. So the anxiety that I mentioned I developed, that really, really specifically showed up when I would ride my horse. And some other times, but almost immediately when I got back to riding, I was, doing the same type of, I do English jumping, and, I was just way more relaxed overall, even when I was challenged with the various exercises and things that we were doing. The brain fog, I didn't realize that I had brain fog.
Yeah.
And that is probably like high up on the list that that's significantly better, if not gone.
It's amazing what we tolerate.
Right.
That's less than optimal. But like even general health people do that all the time. Well, I've got a little bit of a wheeze. I guess when you get older, you have that happen. And it's like, no, that's not normal. So that's cool. Like you tolerated that for a while. You knew something was wrong, but you kind of tolerated it because you got used to it. And now that the instigator of what made that happen is gone, it's noticeable, the difference.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And I haven't retested my blood work yet because I wanted to give a minimum of 6 months because obviously the thyroid antibodies are not going to come down overnight.
Right.
So we're 7 months now. So it's something that I'm pretty much due to get done. I was going to wait 6 or more months. So we'll see how that turns out.
Do you boost your iodine or some other kind of thyroid healers, or do you do anything supplementally to kind of help with that, maybe speed it along?
So I'm a big believer in supplements. Like I always say, like food first, no matter what. And
Right.
then, you know, supplements should always be used to support what you're doing with food. But that being said, you know, digestive support, digestive enzymes, I've been able to reduce those a little bit. I have taken minerals and iodine. I think that's helped me. I'm not taking excessive amounts of anything.
Right.
Because I don't believe in that either. But I do, you know, definitely believe in supplements. And I think that the things that I'm taking now can help me because I've eliminated the blocking factor.
Yes.
Or what I call blocking factor that was really blocking me from feeling good all the, you know, most of the time and was causing a lot of those symptoms.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Look, I love hearing you say you're not doing too much because a lot of times people will say, well, I have thyroid kind of issues starting to develop. I've heard that iodine helps, and then they go wild on the iodine, and you can actually hurt yourself having too much iodine. Iodine's good in the natural sources. Do you do like seaweed or other kinds of forms of iodine, or do you take it just supplementally?
Just in a mineral, it's a mineral combination supplement. I don't even take it on its own. It's just a multi-complex mineral supplement. Yeah.
I have one of those as well. Keto Chow makes a nice daily minerals kind of thing, and it's got all the balance in there. You don't need to do too much, you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so here you are today. Do you regret it? I know the answer, but do you regret the initial decision to get them in, or are you glad you went through this so that now you can help other women?
Both, honestly. Yeah. I mean, you know, of course, if I could go back and do it over, knowing that I know everything that I know now, of course, I would never do that. That being said, am I glad I can share my story now? You know, I've always believed in walking my talk and practicing what I preach and, you know, doing the things that I do and teaching my clients to do those things. And I have the experience of going through this to be able to share my story. You know, would I wish that on anyone? No. Of course, am I going to, you know, use that and try to share this out with as many people as in as many places as possible as I can? Absolutely.
Do you know what I love about your story other than your bravery and sharing it? Because a woman talking about having her breast implants and then having them removed, it's not the most glamorous thing in the world to talk about. So thank you for your bravery here today. But I think you're showing that, look, if you're having issues in your health and you've got your diet dialed in clean, and you had your diet and it's been clean since 2006. So 15 years you've been at this really being good. And you're not seeing results, you got to look at other things. I'll tell you something in my role, it wasn't breast implants, but I had mercury amalgams.
Yeah.
And root canals in my mouth, like tons of them. I chewed hard candy when I was a kid and leave it in there. I didn't know. Mama didn't say anything. So I had really bad teeth early 20s. And so had a bunch of mercury amalgams put in. I had a nice dental insurance plan at the time. Had 4 root canals, maybe like 11 or 12 mercury amalgams. It was bad. And then, of course, I started having the problems in my early 40s and just before. And so I would taste the metal. I would taste the infection that was happening with the root canals. Anyway, all that to say, I got all that cleaned up. And then my cholesterol drops for like 100 points within 6 months. Like it goes to show you that we can't just look at markers in your health. You can't just look at somebody with weight on their body without knowing the context. You can't assume, people could assume, well, what are you eating in your diet, Dani? You must be doing something wrong, and you're doing everything right. Your story shows there's other things environmentally, lifestyle-wise, that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I just love that you brought that up, because my approach with myself and with clients, of course, has always been food first, fueling. Even I go by the context of fueling before fasting. I know we haven't talked about fasting, but just in context of what we're talking about, you always have to get the food right in the eating window before you can do anything else, whether it's fasting, whether it's fitness, whether it's, looking at underlying causes that are contributing to symptoms. If the food's not right, nothing else can be right. And then once you get the food right and look at that, then you can start to look at, that's the foundation for everything that we do. And then you can build on that. So that's where the hormones and the digestive issues and the other detoxification issues can come in that can contribute to the problems that might make it seem like the food is not right. But when there's other things that need to come into play that you need to look for, as far as like other blocking factors, for you was mercury. For me, it was, the breast implants, and there's a lot of them. So.
Yeah. Let's back up a bit, because you just triggered a thought. So in the midst of this, from 2012 until you ultimately had the breast removed this year, you had to be going crazy trying to figure out what to do. Supplements. Did you try periods of like longer fasting, thinking, okay, I'll just kill everything, I'll get some autophagy going on, something's going on in there? Did you do things like, and I don't want to describe it as extreme, but maybe a little more intense than you would have but for these symptoms?
Yeah. So funny enough, how I sort of found fasting was because after I got the implants and I started to have a lot of the digestive issues, I noticed that I felt better if I had a longer time between dinner the night before and breakfast the next day.
Okay.
At the time, I was not, still not heavy into social media or any groups, or like I was just still on my own with the, working with clients offline, so to speak. And so it took me a little while to really research and realize that people actually like stopped eating on purpose. Yeah. And that there was actual heat. Like, it wasn't just my imagination that having a break between dinner and breakfast the next day, like people actually did that on purpose. And there was actual like
about my
science behind it. And that was one of the first books I ever got on fasting.
Yes.
And so, yeah, extreme. Like, I thought it was extreme at the time, but I noticed like my gut started to feel better, and I had, my energy was a little bit better and that kind of thing. So with that being said, at that same time where the fasting came into play, that's, I had been very meat-based, ketovore, if you want to call it, that's like a word now. I mean, years ago, what was ketovore, right? But I also, that's kind of the time where I really got into meat only and carnivore as well.
Yeah.
A lot of broth fasting,
yes.
Meat only, no vegetables, things like that. And so, yeah, like at the time I thought they were extreme. Obviously now I don't think they're as extreme, but yes, to answer your question, I had to do a lot of that and figure a lot of that on my own because I was like desperate to find ways to feel better.
Yeah, it's mainstream now. I see Steak and Butter Gal just got here. Hey, Bella.
Hey, Bella.
He's one of the ones that kind of champions the meat-based diet, and yeah, not extreme at all. But yes, once and again it was. But you were trying all these things and to no avail. And a lot of people would look at that and say, well, see, that didn't work. See, the carnivore diet didn't work, the fasting didn't work because you didn't see all your symptoms gone. No, it worked.
Right.
It just did not provide the relief from this ongoing toxin that's in your breast area.
Right, exactly. And I might have mentioned earlier, sorry if I'm repeating myself, but that also, you know, around the 2015 mark, that's where I got into the acupuncture because I had done the diet stuff and the, you know, the functional stuff, and that I still had the symptoms. So I'm like, well, let me try acupuncture because, you know, that's not my wheelhouse, but maybe, you know, the Chinese medicine would be a better route for me. I mean, I didn't know. So thousands of dollars on that. Felt a little bit better, had a little bit of improvement. I mean, I have amazing acupuncturist. She helped me tons. But again, it wasn't, you know, there was still the underlying factor.
Your story is one of perseverance, because I think a lot of people will try things, Dani, and then, okay, nothing's working. I'm sure you hear that from clients a lot. I tried everything, nothing's working. And then, no, there's an infinite number of things that it could be. And sometimes it's the most obvious things, your breast implant. And sometimes not so obvious, right? And so your story is quite inspiring for those people who feel like they've gotten stuck on a journey. If it's weight, if it's health, if it's anything, you know, and thank God you did have all, or as you said earlier, thank fucking God that you found that it was this, because there are people, and you didn't really have heavy symptoms like the friend of yours that had the bags under the eyes, jaundice in the eyes and all that going on. That was obvious. Okay, something bad's happening. But for you, it was just symptomatically. It really didn't manifest as anything. I think it would have. Had you not gotten them taken out, you would have probably developed Hashimoto's.
Yes, agreed. Totally agreed.
And so your story's inspiring, Dani, which is why I wanted to have you here today. Again, guys, go check her out. That's Dani Conway. She is carnivore.keto.fitness. We could have talked about all kinds of things related to nutritional health, but I thought the breast cancer, or the breast implant, I'm sorry, you don't have cancer, breast implant surgery story was very, very interesting. We're definitely looking forward to sharing this on my Real Talk podcast. Fascinating. And thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for being a supporter of my work. You're always liking my posts and watching my stories and my lives. I really appreciate you being out there. And thank you.
I love watching your journey, your sabbatical journey that you're going through right now as well. So
thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the journey so far, but I'm doing lots of things to make that needle move in my life that has been my breast implants, and that's my belly. So we're working on it.
Good deal.
Tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com.